everyone, welcome to a new video on the channel. Today we are doing the February mid-month reading update. I have 8 books to talk about and I'm going to get straight into it. So the first book that I finished for February was Bookshops and Bonedust by 𝓤𝓲𝓕𝓲. This is technically the first book because it's the prequel to Legends and Lattes. I read Legends and Lattes last year in December in preparation because I knew that we were picking up Bookshops and Bonedust for the January book club read. However, my library, I'm doing a challenge this year where I try to pick up as much books through the library or without spending money on books that I know that I wasn't going to put on my physical TBR personally. And my library was really delayed at getting me this book, so I got it on the very last day of January. So naturally, I finished it on the first day of February, and I thought this was okay. I gave it 4 stars, and I also gave the first book 4 stars. They're very low stakes, so it's not something that I feel like is easy to review because you kind of know you're going in for something that is really cozy and low stakes. This one's set around a bookshop this time around, and Viv is wounded and recovering from not only being kicked out of being a warrior and her job, but obviously this really nasty leg injury, and she finds herself almost at rock bottom for her personal feelings and is in a small township and helps the owner of the bookshop sort of revive it and make it more welcoming. And yeah, it's really cute. There's obviously a subplot to it where they're being approached by an evil sorcerer or necromancer or something like that. And yeah, it's just, yeah, it was really low stakes. For me, I wouldn't say this is my type of cozy fantasy. Like, I love cozy fantasy, but the low stakes, just if you just need to spend some time with something in the background, this is great. I didn't find myself like engaged fully while I was listening to this, but it was really cute. So yeah, 4 stars. The next book that I completed was Fathomfolk by 𝓤𝓲𝓶𝓮. Sorry, this is a first book in a new series called Drowned World, and it is an East Asian inspired, don't want to say it's historical, but it is definitely like full of like folklore, and it's really rich in its atmosphere and stuff. I gave this one 3.5 stars. I did get this as an arc, and whilst I enjoyed some things about it, I did find I struggled a lot with this book. So it follows 3 different voices. We have Mira, who is a Fathomfolk that was born into this semi-submerged city where this all takes place, and she has finally made it up the ranks into, I think it's captain or general or something. No, it's not general. I think it's captain of one of the guards. And this is a big deal because the city is ruled by humans rather than the people who are deemed as fathom folk or people from the sea. And she is also in a relationship with the water dragon ambassador, and is seen to be like in a bit of a rich boy, poor girl situation. So she grew up in a very poor district and she's really struggled to get to where she is, but she's been really determined to get there. And then you get the second point of view, which is from Nami, and she is a now exiled water dragon and the sister of Mira's partner Kai, and she is sent to the city because she did some wrong deeds in the sea, and through her eyes we get a very naive, very wondrous type of view, and she easily is swayed to the rebellion because the city is constructed in a very unequal sort of stance where there's a hierarchy of wealth and people and power, and it's all about the corruption of that and how it how people are wanting to fight back and to survive and all that. And so she gets thrust into the rebellion, and then I feel like with her point of view it was very much so like she's very naive and she wants to do good, but she didn't really have any personality, if that makes sense. And then the third point of view we get is from Cordelia. She is my favorite. She is someone who is really manipulative and working very hard to get her husband to the top of the ranks, and also has a secret identity, and is just like the villain of the story, but also I don't feel like she's in the only villain, if that makes sense. I really liked her. However, as much as I am pointing out that these characters all had different avenues, I found that the story was really tediously dull, and really, like, you get a very rich atmosphere and all, but I don't know, I just feel like it was dry and took a lot to get into scenes, and it's very political, which is never a huge thing on my list. So perhaps I picked it up wrong. It sounded really good in the synopsis, but when I got into it, I just found like you're thrust into this world immediately, and it's almost like you're expected to know what a Fathomfolk is. There's no real long-term explanation around it. There's no, yeah, it's just a little bit all over the place and a little bit disjointed. So I could see where the author was coming from, and I really did like the latter portion of the book. But yeah, 3.5 stars, unfortunately. The third book I finished was Curvy Girls Can't Date Quarterbacks by Kelsey Stoughton. This is the first book in the Curvy Girls Club. This is a YA romance, and I picked this up because my best friend chose it as her pick for one of the prompts that I had for the month of February. This one I mostly put onto my TBR because it follows a character who has the condition PCOS, or polycystic ovarian syndrome, and I suffer from that. So I don't see that often enough represented in fiction, so I wanted to read about that. I did feel like this portion of the storyline was underutilized and also made to sound more negative. I would have liked to have seen a bit more explanation around the condition, and also a little bit more like research from the main character's point of view. But essentially she is obese, she's gained some weight, and there is a mean girl in her class, and she says that she can't get, you know, any hot guys because of how she looks, and had enough. She's just been given this really horrible condition diagnosis in the morning, and the main girl, I think her name, gosh, what's her name? Doesn't actually say it in this synopsis either. It's one of those first person synopsises, which is really annoying. Oh gosh, let me quickly scroll down. Rory, that's right, Aurora. And Rory's had enough, and she just turns on Merritt, the mean girl, and says, "You know what? I can get any guy to love me. It's not just because of how I look." And obviously, it starts this like very much so like a teen romance movie where she's in a bet to make the quarterback of the school, Beckett, fall in love with her and take her to the prom. Oh no, homecoming, sorry. And obviously, the storyline follows Rory's efforts. She does get these really cute friends that are also plus sized, and they all really like, we're going to take down the mean girls of the school. This is amazing. You're going to represent us. And I found this one okay. Like I came into it knowing it wasn't going to be the greatest thing, so that's why I gave it 4 stars. It's readable, and it's mildly enjoyable. Like I didn't have any problems with it. I found that the teenage tone of Rory was very much so on par with what I expect of a teenager, and whilst there were some exasperating moments with her, I found myself really engaged in the story. I actually cried at the scene where you know what's going to happen, the bet's going to come out and all that. I actually cried, which was really funny because like I don't normally find myself just crying. So yeah, I thought because it gave me more emotions and stuff, and I did feel for her, and yeah, I gave it 4 stars. It's cute enough. You might find that the first chapter's up on like Facebook. I think I read it before I even knew what it was. And I was like, what the hell? You know, those little stories that you see on Facebook and they kind of hook you in and you read them and they're just so bad that they're so good. It's kind of one of those stories. But I'm actually going to continue on the series. And my friend is actually reading it with me, not the one that prompted it, but another friend. And she's enjoying it as well. So yeah, we're going to continue the series together. Okay, the next book I finished was Done and Dusted by Lala Sage. This is book one in the Rebel Blue Ranch series, and I read this because I got the ARC copy of book two, so obviously I wanted to set the scene up and know what happened in the first book. And this follows Emmy, or Clementine, and she is a champion barrel racer. She's been on the circuit for I think 10 years, and she left her small town of Meadowlark and Rebel Blue behind to just get out and ride her horse. But she's had an unfortunate accident, thankfully not on her own horse, and it scared her enough that she's gone home and she doesn't want to be a barrel racer anymore. And you get to experience Emmy's growth back into becoming a rider again, which I really appreciate. I own horses, so of course I find this really interesting. Where was I? Yeah. The other thing is that there's the romance portion of the book. So you've got Emmy recovering from this really bad fall and her fears of riding, and she's come home, and someone who she has always found antagonistic towards her is Luke Brooks. He is the owner of the bar. He's also her brother's best friend. He's basically lived at Rebel Blue for most of the teenage years, and she just finds him so irritating. And when she comes back into town, obviously it's been 10 years and things change. He helps her get back into riding. He helps her just really recover. There is instant attraction between them, which it was it was good. It was not like insta love, so I was okay because it's one of my pet peeves. And I felt like the romance built well enough that it was believable. But the reason I only gave this 4 stars, not five, is I did struggle a little bit with how wholesome the story was. Like Emmy's got is it ADHD or autism? One of them. She's neurodivergent, and again that touches home because my sister also is neurodivergent, so I really like that representation in romances. It makes me feel like really happy to see love for all people and all shapes, sizes, brains, you know, any way we are is really one of my favorite things to read about. And so that's great, but I found it really hard to switch from the wholesomeness and then move into the smut. This one, the smut is just not my cup of tea. Um, it's no secret if you follow me for a while that smut has never been um, my favorite thing in a book, especially if it overtakes the book and removes the plot. This is not the case in this one, thankfully, but I did find that the switch from Brooks being this really nice, sweet cinnamon roll to being really mouthy and dirty in bed and the degradation isn't my thing. So I know that for a lot of people, they quite enjoy this, but it kind of read to me, and I hate saying this because I really like the author's way of writing, but it kind of read to me like Tumblr level smart or Wattpad level smart. And I'm not trying to put down authors that do fanfic or anything like that because I write fanfic, but like, yeah, it just, the smut sort of didn't fit with everything else that was going on for me. I just felt it was not on the same level of writing, and it felt very samey to all the like really mediocre smut that you can find for free online. Oh, that sounds so bad. I feel so bad for having that point of view, but that's just how I feel. So really liked this world and gave it 4 stars. But yeah, I once the tension broke into smut, it really ruined it for me, and I struggled to continue to have an interest in the characters outside of the smut. But it's still a really good read. The fifth book that I completed was House of Flame and Shadow by Sarah J. Maas. This is the third book in the Crescent City series. I started this at the end of January when it came out. I listened to it as well as read the book. I also did a buddy read with two friends and really enjoyed my time. I will preface this saying, I think I've said it a few times, but for those who are new, I am not the biggest Sarah J. Maas reader. Like, I've read all her books now, um, and I think Throne of Glass is an exceptional series and will always stand on that hill that it's her best work. But um, Crescent City has been one that was really hard for me to get involved in. I personally don't vibe with some of the aspects of urban fantasy. Like, yeah, it's just not my thing for drugs and drinking. So I was really like against it at first when I read the first book. So I didn't really involve myself enough in Bryce. I didn't like her. And book two, I came to like side characters a great deal and loved that they got a more time in the book to express their storylines. I really enjoyed that. And so for books one and two, I gave them both reluctant 4 stars because I didn't enjoy them enough, but there was something that would make me go, well, it's not a 3.5 star, if that makes sense. However, this one was a 5 star read, and I am in I think the minority now because a lot of people are really hating on this one and really hating on Bryce's characterization, and I absolutely loved her in this one. She reminded me of Aelin when Aelin starts to really get going in the Throne of Glass series and be unapologetic for who she is and have some really wild plans. So I really enjoyed Bryce in this one, and I really enjoyed the time spent in the other world. I won't give away spoilers, even though they're pretty much all over the internet. Yeah, I think this one was really well paced. It was actually quite fast. For the other two books have been really dull and slow to begin with. This one started out straight away and kept me engaged the entire time. I actually finished this last out of the three friends of us reading together because I just wanted to savor it. I didn't want to rush it. I didn't want to consume it. So I was the last to finish, but I really enjoyed this. And I am excited to see what comes next in this world for the other characters because it feels very wrapped up. But the author has mentioned that she has more CC stories ready to like write out. So who knows? Maybe she will give me a solid and grant me my favorite character a book of his own. I'm in, again, the small minority that doesn't find Tharian annoying. I actually really like his storyline, so I would really like to see more explored through him, through Ethan, though I don't really enjoy him, but he's got storyline left open, if that makes sense, and through Hypaxia. So those three characters are ones that I would look out for if she's going to write more. But I think this book could, where it ends, could wrap up this world completely and I'm satisfied with it. Yeah, that's all I'm going to say on it because I know everyone's talking about this book and I'm trying to be really spoiler free with anything about this book. So the next book I finished was Love Off Limits. It is a standalone-ish book in the Some Kind of Love series. This is book 3. I have not read book 1 or 2, but it was said that I could read it as a standalone, and it worked. And this is by Jenny Proctor. I got this on a Stuff Your Kindle day, and I am trying to take down the amount of books I have on my Kindle library by just reading books using a jar, the old TBR jar, and drawing out a number. I drew out the number for this one, so I picked it up. And this follows a small town romance. Um, it follows, what is her name? Why do they always have to write the synopsis in first person? I should really write down the names so I can come in and talk about books, shouldn't I? What is her name? Olivia. So Olivia ends up at a wedding for her best friend of college. When they were in college, they used to be roommates, and she spends one night with Tyler, and they absolutely hit it off. She thinks he's fantastic, and then she kind of gives him the cold shoulder, as in, I can't date you because I've got to go back to my small township. I'm going to be taking over the family farm, which has been her entire life goal to run the farm. It's a very successful farm and wedding venue in North Carolina, and she thinks she'll never hear from Tyler again. She kind of ghosts him a little bit. And then Tyler decides to up and leave his very stable job that he's had ever since he was 16 and go and see what he can get from working with Olivia on her farm. When he arrives, he's obviously been a little bit misled by her, and ends up working as a farmhand instead. And they try to not fall in love with each other because Olivia is very dead set on that she cannot date him and be successful with the farm. I found this one, I gave it 3.5 stars. Um, It was okay. I liked Tyler a lot more than Olivia. I found that he was really rather adorable. I liked the fact that he worked hard and he was prepared to wait for Olivia to come around. He didn't didn't pressure her into anything, didn't endlessly annoy her. Sure, there was flirty banter and stuff whenever they crossed paths, but overall, he was a really decent guy actually. Olivia was really hard to read. I found her quite exasperating at times. I know she was trying to protect herself and do the right thing and show her family her worth, but I think all of it could have been resolved if she actually talked to her family. She was very much so against talking to anyone, and the miscommunication between her family really drove me insane. And it also made her and then also her father and her brother seem like really horrible people at times, and I couldn't quite grasp why you would be in such a really tight-knit family and then treat each other like that. It just felt really odd to me. So I didn't really enjoy that aspect of it, but it was enjoyable enough to read overall. It had a cute ending, and yeah, it wasn't the worst thing I've read in a long time, so I'm glad that I even finished it, because every other book I've tried for the Kindle takedown, I've either DNF'd or just left at a sampled level, which is what I call anything that I read and it's under 10% before I put it down. So yeah, 3.5 stars for that one. We have two books left to talk about. The next one is The Wicked King by Holly Black. This is book 2 in the Folk of the Air series. I am rereading the series. I've done obviously The Cruel Prince and then the little novella in between for the first time. I talked about them in my last reading update, and then I've just done The Wicked King. For the first time I read it as a physical, I gave it 5 stars, and this time around also 5 stars. Absolutely love this return to Alfheim. I'm so obsessed with Jude and Cardan as it is, but it was really interesting to listen to it. I'm finding that I'm picking up on little areas differently. Also, the narrator is fantastic, and the way that they present dialogue is just phenomenal, and I think that really adds to the story. So I'm really enjoying my reread of the series. I have The Queen of Nothing on hold at the library. Hopefully it'll come in soon and I can finish the series, because I do want to read this first before picking up The Stolen Heir. And the final book that will be spoken about in this video is book 2 of the Rebel Blue Ranch. It's Swift and Saddled by Lana Sage, and I gave this one also 5 stars. I absolutely loved this one. So unlike with the first book where I was really put off by the intimacy, this one was perfection. This was the right kind of level of chemistry and storyline. So this follows Wes and Ada. Ada was originally I shouldn't say originally, previously married in a really toxic environment, and has had a divorce and is now trying to rebuild herself. She didn't finish an interior design course that she was on, but she has the credentials enough to really see something and want to change it. And so she was hired to build up the old ranch house into a guest house with Wes. And when they very first meet, it's actually in Brooke's bar, and the chemistry is instant. It's very, very hot, but tasteful. And then the next morning, they find out they're actually having to work with each other. So Ada very much so goes, we're not doing anything. I'm just going to ignore this physical attraction to Wes as much as possible. I'm here to work. I do not want to be interrupted by anything. So I'm just career focused and let's just get to it. Wes, obviously, bless his heart, he's very much so a golden retriever guy, and he goes along with it, but even though he really, really wants Ada, they have a lot of tension, which is great. It's just built up really well. And again, with the representation, so in the first book I mentioned there was representation of mental health and neurodivergence. Again, in this one, Wes has depression, and Ada is obviously recovering from a traumatic marriage. And I really like that Wes and Ada balance each other out, but also Wes isn't about to sit there and just baby her. He also is very much so like honest. He's very vulnerable from the beginning, so it makes her feel like she can be vulnerable about some of the things that are tormenting her still. I just really felt like this was well written and very well represented, and I cannot wait to read book 3 whenever it comes out. I highly recommend this series. Also, this one really sold me on cowboy romances. Like, I haven't read very many of them. I've written one myself and I've always like held things to that standard, which is really bad of me, but I really liked this one and I really cannot wait for more from this author. I really think that they deserve all the hype that they're getting right now. And that is all the books that I've read so far in February. I have actually finished one more, but I finished it after the halfway mark, so I will talk about that one in the end of month reading update. I am very much so enjoying my reading this month, and I cannot wait to be back with a new video for you all, which will hopefully be setting up March in my reading journal. So do stay tuned for that one. And until we next meet, I hope you're having fun reading or journaling, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye everyone!